Have you ever walked into a room and instantly started scanning it? Not in a dramatic movie spy way, just quietly. You notice who's sitting next to whom, who looks bored, who's dominating the conversation, who's pretending to laugh. You pick up on the tension between two people who haven't even spoken yet. And while everyone else seems busy talking, you're watching. Maybe someone has even said to you, "You're so quiet," like it's a mystery they're trying to solve, or worse, like it's a flaw. We tend to assume that the loudest person in the room is the most confident, the fastest talker is the smartest, the one who jumps in immediately must be the most engaged. But psychology tells a very different story, because sometimes the person saying the least is processing the most. Today, I want to talk about the psyche of quiet observers, the ones who sit back, the ones who notice everything, the ones who don't always speak first, but often understand the most. Imagine this. You're at a family gathering. There's noise everywhere, conversations overlapping, someone arguing about politics, someone showing baby pictures, someone trying to get everyone's attention. And then there's you. You're not disengaged, you're not bored, you're absorbing. Your brain is doing something fascinating. Research on introversion and sensory processing, including work inspired by psychologists like Carl Jung and later expanded by personality researchers, suggests that some people simply process external stimulation more deeply. Not better, not worse, just deeper. For quiet observers, social situations aren't shallow streams, they're oceans. Every tone shift, every micro-expression, every awkward pause carries meaning. Your brain doesn't skim, it dives. And that diving takes energy. That's one reason why quiet observers may speak less. It's not that they don't have thoughts, it's that they have too many, layered and cross-referenced. While someone else is reacting to what was just said, you're thinking about what was said 5 minutes ago, how it connects to something someone else mentioned, and what it might imply about the group dynamic as a whole. You're not behind, you're zoomed out. There's a concept in psychology called thin slicing, popularized by researchers like Malcolm Gladwell when discussing rapid cognition. It refers to our ability to make quick inferences based on small pieces of information. Quiet observers often become exceptionally skilled at this, not because they're trying to judge people, but because they've trained themselves, consciously or not, to read subtle cues. They notice the way someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes, the slight delay before someone answers a question, the way a confident person's voice tightens when a certain topic comes up. And here's the twist. They often don't even realize they're doing it. To them, it just feels like a vibe. But psychologically, it's pattern recognition, the brain building predictive models based on accumulated observation. It's social intelligence running quietly in the background. Of course, being a quiet observer doesn't always feel like a superpower. Sometimes it feels isolating. When you're the one who sees the tension no one is naming, it can feel lonely. When you notice someone being subtly excluded, you feel it in your chest. When you pick up on inauthenticity, you can't unsee it. And because you don't always speak up immediately, people may underestimate you. They might assume you're shy or insecure or uninterested. But often, what's really happening is self-regulation. In neuroscience, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain involved in reflection, impulse control, and decision-making, acts like a filter. For many quiet observers, that filter is strong. Thoughts don't just spill out, they get evaluated, polished, turned over. Is this worth saying? Will this help? Is this the right moment? While others externalize their thinking, quiet observers internalize it. And that internal world, it's rich. Think about how this shows up in childhood. There's usually the kid who raises their hand immediately, and then there's the one sitting in the back watching everything. Teachers sometimes worry about that quiet child, But often, that quiet child is building a detailed mental map of the classroom, who the leader is, who gets teased, who's struggling silently. Developmental psychology suggests that some children develop heightened observational skills as a response to their environment. Maybe they grew up in a household where it was safer to watch before speaking. Maybe they learned early on that understanding others helped them navigate complex emotional landscapes. Observation becomes adaptation, and adaptation becomes identity. Over time, this can evolve into deep empathy, because when you spend years paying attention to what's not being said, you become fluent in silence. You understand pauses, you respect them. You're comfortable sitting with someone's sadness without rushing to fix it. That's not passivity, that's emotional tolerance. But here's something important. Being a quiet observer doesn't mean you lack confidence. In fact, it can mean the opposite. Confidence isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the ability to sit in a room without performing, without needing to dominate, without chasing validation through constant contribution. There's a kind of groundedness in that. Of course, there's also a shadow side. Quiet observers can overthink. They can replay conversations in their heads at 2 a.m., analyzing every word. They can hesitate to speak up, waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. They can feel misunderstood when others mistake their silence for indifference. And sometimes they hide behind observation as a shield. Watching feels safer than being seen, because being seen means being judged. It means revealing your own vulnerabilities instead of just studying everyone else's. So the growth edge for a quiet observer isn't be louder, it's be visible when it matters. Your voice, when you choose to use it, carries weight precisely because you don't use it constantly. When you speak, people often listen. There's a psychological principle called expectancy violation. When someone behaves differently than anticipated, we pay attention. If the quiet person suddenly shares a sharp insight, it lands harder. It disrupts the pattern, and that disruption can be powerful. In literature and film, the quiet observer is often the narrator, the one who sees the truth others miss. Think about characters who stand slightly outside the chaos, describing it with clarity. They aren't the loudest in the story, but they're often the most perceptive. In real life, too, many thinkers, writers, and innovators were known for their reflective nature. People like Susan Cain, who brought the science of introversion into mainstream conversation, have shown that our culture often overvalues extroversion. We celebrate the bold speaker, the charismatic leader, but we forget the strategist quietly connecting dots behind the scenes. If you're a quiet observer, your brain likely thrives on depth. Surface-level small talk might drain you, but a meaningful one-on-one conversation can light you up. You'd rather explore one idea thoroughly than skim 10. And in a world addicted to noise, depth is rare. Think about social media for a moment. Everyone broadcasting, posting, reacting instantly. The quiet observer scrolls differently. You're not just consuming content, you're analyzing it. You notice patterns in how people present themselves. You sense insecurity behind exaggerated confidence. You detect trends before they become obvious. You see the meta layer. That ability to step back and observe the system instead of getting swept up in it is psychological gold. It allows for critical thinking, for emotional regulation, for wisdom. But it requires balance. Because observation without participation can turn into distance, and distance, if it goes too far, becomes disconnection. So maybe the real invitation for quiet observers isn't to change who they are, it's to trust what they see, and then occasionally step forward with it. To say, I've been thinking about this. To share the insight that's been forming quietly in the background. To let others see the depth you carry. You don't have to become the loudest voice in the room. You don't have to compete with noise. Your power is in clarity. There's something almost philosophical about the quiet observer.
In many contemplative traditions, awareness itself is considered transformative. Simply noticing, without immediate reaction, creates space, and in that space, choice lives. When you observe before acting, you respond rather than react. You understand context, you see complexity. You're less likely to be manipulated by surface impressions because you've trained yourself to look deeper. That's not weakness, that's strength. So the next time someone calls you too quiet, maybe smile a little, because what they may not realize is that your silence isn't empty, it's active, it's listening, it's calculating, it's feeling. You are not absent from the room, you are aware of it. And awareness is a kind of quiet leadership. If this resonates with you, if you've ever felt misunderstood because you weren't the loudest voice in the room, I hope you see yourself a little differently now.